I flew 106 missions in Vietnam. So, like I say, it was a job. So Super Cunny was pretty well up to date, and the engines were good. Man, we'd shut down. Sometimes we'd have 2 shut down, but we'd make it back. And I can remember we dumped fuel one day because we lost engine and all. We were heavy loaded. Dump fuel. Well, when you dump fuel, you can't reverse props because you suck the fuel up into the engine. You get a fire. Well, then you have to brake. Well, when you brake, then your brakes catch on fire. So if you dump fuel and you're coming in with engines out, you call, declare emergency. The fire trucks are along the runway. And one day coming back, the aircraft commander says, "Cliff, you tell me when everybody's out." And I said, "Okay." Well, we landed, and the brake did catch fire, but the fire crew was there. They put it out. In about 8 seconds, I says, "Everybody's out, I'm leaving." He says, "I'm behind you." 8 seconds, 19 guys leave out the airplane. They're moving. Our biggest problem, like I say, was other airplanes. One day we took off and we had to make an emergency dive because KC-135 was going in to land. We were close enough that the whole plane shook. But we had air superiority, so flying wasn't too bad. You know about the big turkey shooting in Vietnam. Well, the MiGs were up just outside Saigon. The 105s were the main fighter. And they'd be bomb loaded. They'd be going up for a target. The MiGs would come up, they'd drop their bombs and run. Well, the big turkey shoot was, instead of 105s, it was F4s went up. The MiGs came up and they come at them like, "Hey, these will drop their bombs and run." No, they didn't. They shot 8 out of 10 out, down. That was the end. From then on, air superiority. And then, of course, the weather, that was the big bad problem. One night, the wing commander, squadron commander, and officers, they were at the command center seeing how we were doing because a big storm had moved in. We had to penetrate it to go home. And when it was time to go home, the pilot looked at me and said, "Okay, you got it." So I put my head in the radar scope. The navigator flew as co-pilot because we wanted more eyes looking out for other airplanes and all. And that's where, of course, the 42 radar was. So I put my head in the scope and I picked our way through. And that's when I didn't do it by myself. The Lord was with me. I had that. If you've ever had that nice warm feeling with the 23rd Psalm going through your mind, you're not saying it, but it's there. And when we broke out and we called pigeons and told them what our ETA was for home station, pilot looked at me and said, "I never thought we'd see home station tonight," but we did. 19 souls on board the airplane. We had double crew, of course. And of course, that's when the wing commander and all, they went to bed then. But they said we were considered one of the best crews, and if we could do it, we'd do it. We lost a crew. They took off in a storm. And we lost 2 crews. But that crew took off. Thunderstorm hit them and drove them in the ground doing 200 knots. No survivors. The other crew came in a heavy rainstorm. And in heavy rain, you always think you're higher than you are. So they were too low and they wiped out the approach lights coming into the runway. And about half the crew was killed. The other half survived, but those are the things you have in flying. Went through an airplane crash. And like you say, training is all. We're all trained. I was at Tyndall Air Force Base, C-54. And we went to pick up some water survival gear. And when we landed at Homestead, we refueled, and they gave us jet fuel instead of high octane. Well, we knew the airplane was in good shape. We just landed. So when we went out, we fired up and we says, we're ready for takeoff. He said, Roger, take the active. We took the active. We got 600 feet in the air and everything turned sour. All the cylinder head temperatures peaked. The right wing was on fire. And the left wing, the engine was on fire. And you know, you went through that checklist maybe 6, 10 times. Nothing you could do. So we crash landed, and I went back, and here's this big box of, I don't know, maybe weighed 500, 600 pounds. With all the adrenaline flowing, I just picked it up and rolled it back. And the water survival guy, he opened the door, he says, I'm in water up to my neck. I says, well, you go upwind. So I went upwind along the airplane and came to a ditch, water, I went across, hey, there's a road here. So that's where we went, and that's where the ambulance met us.